Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're unpacking what has to be the most terrifying, bizarre, and yet widely documented medical mystery in human history. Just imagine for a second, an entire city where people literally dance until their hearts explode. Picture it, July 1518, the city of Strasbourg, France. The medieval clock gears are turning slowly. A gloomy fog is hanging over the city square at dawn, and there's just this eerie silence in the air. What's about to happen wasn't a party. It was the absolute beginning of a living nightmare. No music, no celebration. Just pure, agonizing madness. Which brings us to the very first dancer. A woman named Frau Troffea simply steps out of her house and begins to dance. Again, there's zero music playing, no festival, just a haunting, rhythmic movement that she literally cannot stop. Her family is forced to watch in absolute horror as she twirls for hours, and then impossibly for days. 6 days of non-stop twirling, actually. Her feet are raw, her shoes are completely soaked in blood, but her body flat out refuses to rest. And then, almost unbelievably, the madness spreads. Within a single week, this bizarre behavior started spreading like a virus. 34 people somehow joined her in this trance. And by the end of the month, that number had absolutely exploded to 400. 400 people! You really have to imagine this scene. Hundreds of people, eyes wide, faces pale, entirely trapped in a collective trance. And they weren't just joyfully dancing, They were practically screaming in silence. Their hearts were actively failing, their bones were snapping under the sheer physical pressure. But they just kept moving. The city of Strasbourg was essentially witnessing a mass suicide playing out in slow motion. So the authorities had to act, coming up with a deadly prescription. The local authorities were understandably completely baffled. They consulted the top doctors of the time, who came up with a diagnosis that sounds downright insane to us today: hot blood. And their brilliant solution? To just let them dance it out? They actually built a massive wooden stage right there in the town square and even hired professional musicians. They legitimately thought a non-stop party would cure the curse. But it wasn't a cure. It was a total death trap fueled by beating drums and screaming pipes. The musicians played faster and the dancers just dropped like flies. At the peak of this, 15 people were dying every single day. 15! Just from pure agonizing exhaustion. This brings us to the obvious question and two dark theories. So, what actually happened here? Well, looking back, modern science really points to two very dark possibilities to explain this whole thing.
Theory number one is ergotism. Basically, there's this toxic fungus that grows on damp rye bread, and it happens to contain the exact same chemical used to synthesize LSD. If the town's food supply was tainted with it, it absolutely could have caused massive hallucinations and intense muscle spasms.
But theory number two is mass psychogenic illness. Think of it as a total psychological breakdown spread across a whole population, triggered by years of famine, devastating plague, and just unbearable compounding stress. It really makes you wonder, right? Could the human mind truly hijack the physical body to this terrifying extent? Ultimately, this remains history's cold case. Because by September of that year, the dancing stopped, just as mysteriously as it had begun. The few survivors were eventually dragged to a shrine of St. Vitus to seek a cure for their weary souls. And to this day, the dancing plague of 1518 remains a totally unsolved medical mystery. It leaves us with such a chilling question. Could a thought actually become a killer? It's a pretty grim reminder of exactly how fragile that line is between absolute sanity and total madness. So the next time you feel a little rhythm in your feet, you better pray it's just a catchy song, because back in 1518, the music never ended until the dancer died. Thanks for joining me for This Explainer, and definitely keep questioning the crazy history all around you.